Why ramen replaced cigarettes in prison. The rise of noodle currency. Subscribe now for more authentic crime tales. Remember to like, share, and engage with us in the comments below. The sound of correctional officers shouting echoed through the concrete halls of Rikers Island as a brawl erupted in the prison yard. Fists flew, trays clattered, and dozens of inmates scrambled for cover. But what sparked this chaos wasn't gang territory or a fight over cigarettes. It was ramen noodles. When officers finally restored order, the shocking truth became clear. A single pack of ramen had set off a riot. One inmate had refused to pay his debt. A few packs of instant noodles owed for laundry services, and the standoff turned violent. For prison investigators, it was another reminder of a growing, uncontrollable underground economy. Cigarettes had long been outlawed, but something new had quietly taken their place. Ramen had become gold behind bars. The prison staff was stunned. How did a pack of noodles, worth less than $1 on the outside, gain the same value as cigarettes once held? Why were men risking their lives over soup packets? And more importantly, what did this reveal about the deeper crisis unfolding inside America's prison system? To find the answers, we have to go back years before that riot, to when a single decision changed everything about how inmates survived day to day. It began in the early 2000s, when prisons across the United States started banning tobacco products. Officials thought the move would create a safer, healthier environment. Instead, it shattered an economy that had silently kept order for decades. Cigarettes weren't just a habit, they were currency. You could trade a pack for favors, protection, or food. When that disappeared, inmates were forced to find a new form of value. That's when instant ramen noodles quietly rose to power. It started small, a trade here, a favor there, but it spread fast. Ramen was durable, easy to store, and available in commissaries. More importantly, everyone needed food, and prison portions were getting smaller each year due to budget cuts. The noodles became more than a snack, they were survival. By 2013, sociologists and prison researchers noticed the shift. Inmate-led markets were thriving again, and ramen was at the center. In Illinois, California, Texas, everywhere you looked, the same pattern emerged. A simple chicken-flavored brick could get you a haircut, a tattoo, or a clean shirt. 2 bricks might buy protection for the night. 5 could earn you peace for a week. But what no one expected was how dangerous it would become. Ramen wasn't just food anymore, it was power. And where there's power, there's always conflict. In 2015, a correctional officer at a Virginia state prison uncovered a massive black market operation. Hundreds of packs of ramen stacked inside hidden lockers, traded daily like contraband. Some guards were even accused of smuggling in extra boxes for a price. That's when the warden realized this wasn't just about noodles. It was about survival, control, and corruption. And before the year ended, someone would pay the ultimate price for it. The next morning, the prison cafeteria was quiet, but tension hung thick in the air. Inmates stared at their trays, whispering in low voices. Everyone knew what had happened the night before, and everyone knew who had started it. The man who refused to pay his ramen debt had been moved to solitary confinement for his own safety. But in prison, punishment doesn't always come from guards. The Ramen King, as the inmates called him, was a tall, quiet man named Marcus Red Holloway. He had built an empire out of instant noodles. His system was organized: 1 pack for laundry, 2 for cleaning a cell, 5 for protection. He kept track of every deal in a small notebook he hid under his mattress. For months, Red ran the economy inside those walls. Guards looked the other way because, in some strange way, his ramen system kept order. Until last night's riot. As investigators walked the yard, they found broken packets of noodles scattered across the concrete, like the ashes of a currency that had just lost its value. But this wasn't an isolated case. Reports from other prisons were coming in, all describing the same thing: ramen-fueled fights, hoarding, and even thefts from commissary deliveries. Outside the prison, researchers began to take notice. Dr. Michael Gibson Light, a sociologist studying prison life, had been tracking the ramen economy for years. He called it the rise of food-based currency. In interviews, he explained that inmates were not trading ramen for pleasure, they were trading it for survival. When you cut back on food portions and remove cigarettes, he said, you create hunger and boredom. Hunger becomes the new economy. Back inside, Officer Ruiz, a veteran correctional guard, walked the tears shaking his head. It's crazy, he muttered. Used to be cigarettes caused trouble. Now it's soup. He had seen men beaten over a single pack of noodles, seen friendships break over a missing flavor packet. It wasn't just trade anymore, it was power. That night, a shipment of commissary ramen went missing. Entire boxes vanished from the storage room, and no one knew how. Security footage showed two shadows moving through the hall after lights out, but their faces were never seen. Rumors spread fast. Some said guards were helping, others said rival gangs had started stealing from Red's stockpile to take control of the ramen trade. By the next morning, the prison was divided. Half the inmates still trusted Red, but the others saw weakness, a sign his control was slipping. In prison, that kind of weakness could be deadly. When officers made their rounds later that day, they noticed Red's cell door was slightly open. His notebook lay torn on the floor, pages missing. On his bed was a single pack of ramen, unopened, placed carefully in the center like a message. Officer Ruiz froze. He knew what it meant. Someone had just declared war. The morning after Marcus read, Holloway's ramen empire began to crumble. The air inside the prison felt electric, a mix of fear, hunger, and quiet rebellion. Every inmate knew what that single unopened ramen pack meant. A warning, a power shift, a declaration that the Ramen King was no longer untouchable. By noon, word had reached the warden's office. Commissary sales were halted, and the kitchen was locked down for inspection. Guards searched every cell for hidden stashes of noodles. What they found stunned even the most seasoned officers. Entire walls lined with ramen bricks, taped behind vents, stuffed into pillowcases, and even packed inside toilet tanks. Some cells looked more like small warehouses than living spaces. Outside observers called it the Ramen War. What had started as simple trading had now become a fight for dominance inside the prison's underground market. With cigarettes long banned and money useless inside, ramen had become the one thing that truly mattered. It was warmth, it was energy, it was comfort, and now it was worth fighting for. Meanwhile, Red sat alone in the medical wing with bruises around his ribs and a stitched lip. He refused to say who attacked him. Officer Ruiz stood by his bedside, arms crossed, trying to understand how things had gotten this far. It's just soup, Holloway, Ruiz said softly. Red looked up at him and replied, It's not soup when you're starving. That statement would later become the quote that defined the investigation. Reporters picked it up, prison reform activists repeated it in interviews, and soon it became a symbol of something bigger, a glimpse into what really happens when resources inside prison become scarce. Weeks later, the California Department of Corrections released a report confirming that budget cuts had reduced food portions and commissary options in several facilities. Where once prisoners could buy extra food or small comforts, now even a single pack of noodles was hard to get. That scarcity had transformed ramen from a snack into a lifeline and a weapon. But the story didn't end there. After Red's attack, new leaders began rising in the shadows. Inmates formed alliances, building what they called food banks, networks that controlled the ramen trade floor by floor. Violence lessened for a while, replaced by tense negotiations and quiet trades made through cell bars at night. Still, Officer Ruiz couldn't shake the feeling that something worse was coming. One evening, as he walked past the commissary window, he noticed something that made his stomach turn. The ramen shelves, once overflowing with bright orange and red packets, were empty again. The next shipment hadn't arrived. He looked toward the cells, where whispers were already spreading. No food, no ramen, no peace. The camera of a documentary crew would later capture the moment the alarms began to blare. The start of the largest inmate riot the prison had seen in years. And all of it over ramen.